Okay, let's work.
Minovona.
Welcome.
Minovona work.
Oh God! Now we are off to non-Slavic language interpretations.
Yes,
Okay.
we're good at that.
Anyways, welcome to the ThatITShow, the show about IT that makes you more
Slavic.
yes, Slavic thanks you. That makes you intelligent. Okay, you look intelligent, and so
Sono penso positivo.
yeah. Today we decided that the first thing that we need to talk about, and we must talk about, because we are both Linux guys, is whatever is right now happening with Red Hat. I have no words that can describe what is right now happening in the Red Hat world, in the Red Hat Enterprise Linux world, in the open source world connected to the Red Hat, and the whole ecosystem. Although both of us are trainers and both of us work with Red Hat professionally, we completely fail to understand what is happening. So join us after this short intro, and we'll see what we can come up with. What is the Red Hat's idea of the future of the Linux? Roll the intro.
Okie dokie.
Okay.
Can I say something first?
Yes.
I deliberately didn't want to do this episode while all of that was happening in real time in front of our eyes. Because I noticed that a lot of people had the emotions are running high situation, and I failed to understand how that can help in any shape or form. I want to have a little bit of a, let's say, distance from that so that I can gather my thoughts and say a couple of things that need to be said, and I'm guessing that you want to do the same.
Yes, and my main thing that I wanted, and the reason why I wanted to wait on this, is to see what is going to happen. Because when all of this started happening, when the Red Hat gave its announcement on what it plans to do with Linux, things started happening so fast that I wanted for things to calm down, so I can see whatever people want to say, what people think, what is going to happen, because there are a lot of people involved, and a lot of money is involved.
Yes.
So there is a lot of things that needed to settle down before we can either come up to any kind of conclusion. What is the future of the Linux?
Okay. I wanted to start with two things. Okay.
Let me just interrupt you. Let's start with Oracle Linux.
No, we don't.
Yes, this is.
No, we're going to come to that, but let me just say a couple of things first. I wanted to start with a question,
Yes.
so that we kind of give a little bit of context to our lives with Red Hat in focus, and we don't have to do it for a long time. So, when did you first start using Red Hat, and when did you start using it? Let's say much more than what you used to.
I was late to the Red Hat party. I think the first install that I did on CentOS was something like CentOS 4.
Okay.
But I must say one pretty important thing. When I'm thinking about when I started with Red Hat, I'm thinking about when I installed CentOS. And this is one of those things that defined that what we want to talk about. Because let's now set the stage. Let's start from the beginning.
I need to answer the same question
Yes.
before we do, because my history is the complete polar opposite to yours. I did start with Slackware in 1995, and a lot of people did, but my first real distribution that I kind of like hooked into was Red Hat with 303 Picasso, which was 1996 in my life at least. So you came to the Red Hat party, as you said, late. I was very early. And also for context, I started doing Red Hat training in 2005 or 6, and you started 3 years ago or so, 3 years ago. Just for contextual information, that's our background. Now we can set the stage.
Now let's set the stage. First, let's talk about Linuxes or Linuses or whatever.
It's not Linuses.
Whatever the plural is. And let's talk about how this entire ecosystem came to be. So let's go back to the kernel, and let's go back to the quick recap of what the difference between the kernel and the actual operating system is.
Okay.
So I'm going to go with the most down-to-earth explanation. Linux consists of basically what we are calling the Linux today. It consists of two parts. When we are saying Linux, we are using the wrong denomination. It should be called GNU Linux.
Okay.
Say hi to the bearded guy. And but when we talk about Linux, we are talking about Linux kernel that belongs or is maintained by and has a copyright belongs to Linus Torvalds. And we are talking about the distribution itself or distributions that are just a set of fixed packages or fixed applications that are prepared by a team or teams or whatever the structure
Communities,
is, communities, and that are distributed as a set of packages that enable you to create a working system.
Yeah.
So if you don't have the kernel, you cannot create a working system because there is nothing to run the hardware, run the processes and so on. But if you have the kernel, you still don't have a system unless you have some sort of a community that is going to provide you with the packages. Otherwise, you would have to create your own distribution from scratch. This can be done. People using Arch are usually doing it. And it would take you a couple of days, if you know what you're doing, to come to a system that is able to have a pretty limited functionalities, but it's able to run.
You know what that Arch comment that you just made reminds me of? It reminds me of old style Solaris, because that's the way in which that worked as well. You kind of deployed the bare minimum system, then you compiled, GCC from CC, and then you started compiling other utilities and whatnot.
Yes, but
it is reminiscent of what you do with Arch.
Yes, but the reason why we switched over to these packages and this system that we're using today was mostly because the sheer number of packages and the sheer amount of compiling needed to get those packages up and running is something that to be completely honest, you cannot do at your own workstation.
And you are wrong. And I want to go to sidebar here. Did you ever try to do that?
Yes, but I don't see a point.
Me neither. I didn't see a point when I did it. Because it
but I was installing Slackware, and the only thing that you could do back then is if you were not satisfied with what is first you had to recompile the kernel because the kernel itself didn't have the mods, so the modules weren't available. So it was a monolithic kernel, and you had to compile everything in it. And the other thing was that if you were unhappy with some package, you just had to start from scratch because there was no package standard defined. So this was way before the RPMs, debs, aliens, and the different things that you can do. You just got your tarball and then you compiled the package. That was it.
For me, I did it over one summer when we were still back in the old college days. I took the SRPMs and compiled them one by one. It was the most tedious thing that I ever did in IT, so you're completely correct in that. Basically, the reason why we have package management nowadays, let's forget about the enterprise implications for that, just for pure users, because it's much more user-friendly.
It's not that it's user-friendly. It could be made to be done on the user side, but there is no reason to. Precompiled packages just exist because you want to save time. You don't want to create a system. You want to have your system to be up and running in a couple of minutes, not in a couple of days.
Correct.
And this is one of those things. You just need to trade time for usability, and you create your packages in such a way that the packages themselves are pre-packaged or pre-compiled, and then you can use those packages in such a way that they make sense to you. But
that's good.
Now let's talk about the splits. Let's talk about what happened then. Since we started from the sources, one of the major distributions was Slackware back then, but Slackware was, I think, too hardcore for pretty much anyone. It was too complicated for a normal person to use.
Especially if you're coming from the Windows world.
And especially if you wanted to deploy something quickly.
Yes.
you had to do a lot of fidgeting around and a lot of compiling before you had a working system. Then Debian came along.
Yeah, which was much worse.
Debian was much worse, but it got the community running.
Yes,
And
agreed.
the community was what saved Debian.
Yeah.
Because I think that Debian was one of those distributions that didn't make sense in the start, because they were trying to become a technical distribution. They were trying to be a bare bones distribution that would provide you with the enough tools to do what Slackware couldn't, and then to say, okay, you are on your merry way, now compile yourself whatever you need to compile, and then people started creating packages.
My main reason why I started using Red Hat is actually those two opposites of Slackware and Debian, because I went through both phases. And there came Red Hat with the UI-based, basically TUI installation, text user interface-based installation, which was much more user-friendly than what Debian was.
Yes,
And
the
select was
yes.
just a nightmare. Good tool, works well, but still very user-unfriendly. And I started basically on a hunch to use Red Hat more and more, which led me 20-something years later to where I am today.
And just one side note. I started Winget GUI a couple of days ago,
Oh, Lord.
and then it got me in a time capsule back to the Debian days when you could when you basically got all the packages listed alphabetically, without any regard what the package does or whatever, and then you just had a tool that is enabled you to select any package that you wanted and then install it.
But can I say something positive on that note?
Yes.
Basically, almost 30 years later, Microsoft, in a sense, finally admits that they need a package system.
Yes, they need a package system. This is one thing. They enabled users to create something that can auto-update without using Windows updates, because this is one of those things that people take for granted and don't think about it because they are not used to it in the Windows side. And also on Linux side, this is something completely normal, so nobody thinks about it.
Yeah.
And the thing that, okay, let me explain what we're talking about. In Windows updates are going to update the operating system itself and Microsoft products if you enable it. For everything else, you need to do it by yourself. Linux is different because since everything is free, free as in freedom, you can run a package manager. The package manager is going to take note whatever you have installed on the system and then enable you to auto-update it to a particular version that is current in the current distribution that you're using. And this can widely differ between the distributions, but you can update.
General principle.
In general principles is that you can just using one command update the entire system to the latest version of everything that is inside the system. Microsoft with Winget created such a system. So now it has a third-party repository. The packages are there. A lot of packages are there right now, and a lot of them are coming every day. And so you can suddenly create your own updater, and you can create packs.
Excellent.
So you can create packs that will enable you to go and run install for, I don't know, a development machine, a gaming machine.
As long as they introduce a user-friendly way to integrate that with group policies, everything's going to be fine.
I won't hold my breath. But then we are going
I knew it that you were gonna. I had to throw you a bone.
I was trying to do something using GPOs a couple of days ago, and I was really unhappy. I was trying to bulk create local users on local machines.
That's super easy.
It's super easy, but it still is not straightforward. It still requires you to use scripting, and there is a way of doing it using GPOs directly, but it's so complicated to use that it doesn't make any sense. It should be a simple task. But anyways, let's go back to the distributions. So Debian was one. The hallmark of the distribution was that it was using the packages called Debian packages, and they were used .deb.
Yeah.
These are the same packages that currently are used by Ubuntu, Lubuntu, and whatever the Ubuntu flavor you're using.
Star Ubuntu.
Star Ubuntu. Star Ubuntu flavor that you're using, and this has made Ubuntu a success it is because the Ubuntu guys took the idea of a technical distribution to a more user-oriented level. So they created another set of, or another layer of packages that enabled them to create a system that is, I wouldn't call it user-friendly.
A little
but
bit more
a
user-friendly
little bit
still.
more user-friendly, and something that you can maintain by yourself and not have too much technical knowledge.
Okay.
We are not going to go into KDA, GNOME, whatever wars.
No, we are waiting for somebody to do that for us.
Yes, somebody's going to do this for us. So I'm just going to say I hate Emacs, and I'm the GNOME guy. So that's it.
And the LaTeX guy.
So, and this is the vitriol done, and then we can
Continue on our merry path.
Yes. So this was one of those things. Then along came the Red Hat guys. And I'm going to, since you are the old bearded guy with in the Red Hat world, I'm going to let you walk us through what was happening in the beginning and how we got SUSE, Fedora, Red Hat, CentOS,
Whatever.
Rocky, Alma, Oracle, and whatever Linuxes are there.
Okay, so Red Hat began their life as basically what CentOS used to be, as a free distro, just like the Debians of the world and the Slackwares of the world and whatnot. They went from Red Hat, which used to be called just Red Hat without the Enterprise Linux, through versions up to, I think, Red Hat version 9, and then they became Red Hat Enterprise Linux when they went commercial. I should kind of like put this commercial in brackets because Red Hat basically offered support as a commercial thing, not the OS itself, which is within the realms of what the idea of open source is. SUSE came a little bit later. That was in part Novell's work, which is not to be underestimated as well, because Novell used to be quite a big name in the network operating system world back in the days of Windows.
They were the de facto standard in file sharing.
Not only that, they had their directory service, just like IBM as well, which was...
Yes, but in file sharing, when you wanted to do file sharing, you wouldn't be using Windows, you would be using...
In those days, yeah. And that story kind of like rolled for years and years and years until the community started developing something that we know and love, or loved, as CentOS, or Community Enterprise Operating System. I remember starting with version 1. I started from scratch. It was roughly 2003 or 4 when CentOS, I think, free came out, something like that. And I got my first, let's say, side gigs after college. I opened a company and I started doing a little bit of system maintenance on the side. I got my first permanent side gig as a system engineer for one of my long. It used to be a company. It folded in the meantime, but I ran CentOS 2 and 3 there for their file sharing, websites, FTP, more file sharing, a crap load of stuff that was corporate infrastructure. It wasn't a large company in terms of the people employed, but it kind of got me back into the Red Hat world even much more than before, although I was using it all the time. Reason being because this was the most simple way in which people were introduced to Red Hat. CentOS is that. It is like a stepping stone towards Red Hat. That's how we looked at it. And that story kind of continued for the next 15 or so years for me. And while that was happening, on a side, we saw a lot of different structural changes in the IT industry. Along came the cloud and whatnot. Not going to get into that all that much. SUSE had a lot of ups and downs as a part of the history. At a certain point, they kind of like formed a partnership with Microsoft, and that was a sad story of I don't know what happened there, and I don't want to even try to scratch my memory over that. But nowadays, even if you don't like SUSE as a distro, I'm not talking about OpenSUSE, I'm talking about the commercial version now. Even if you are like me and don't like the commercial distribution, they still had, over the years, accumulated a huge amount of very important and super quality applications. Their high availability applications, some stuff related to clustering, their stuff related to load balancing, whatnot, they were really, really good applications. And I had more than a few run-ins with those applications in production environments, which kind of also led to me kind of appreciating them, even without the OpenSUSE, which I appreciated from the start. I think it was a good project from the start. Years rolled by, and along came the year 2020, and this is actually, I think, the start of our story today. When Red Hat, a functional start of
Yes.
our story, when Red Hat did what they did with CentOS.
Let's stop there. Let's stop and go back a couple of years and go to it was early 2000s when Red Hat created Fedora project.
Yeah, I forgot about that one. Sorry.
So we need the Fedora project in this entire picture. We need the Red Hat Enterprise Linux or
I
commercial
was running
Linux.
Fedora in production for years and years
Yes,
until
Fedora
CentOS came along.
was okay. Fedora was okay.
And Scientific Linux as well, which was a CERN project.
Yes. So, but we had Fedora. Fedora was intended to be much more
user-oriented,
desktop-oriented,
Yeah.
or laptop-oriented.
And CentOS was more server-oriented, let's say.
It was intended to be upstream from Red Hat, and this is the important part.
Yes.
Red Hat was intended to be a commercial, enterprise-grade,
Supported.
stable distribution that is going to be rock solid for enterprises, and mainly for servers. And then there was CentOS that was intended to be more of a gateway or entryway to the Red Hat world. That was intended to be both stable and solid, but free, but unsupported.
Yes.
Supported by community, so unsupported by Red Hat.
And it ran like that for many, many years.
And it was like that for many, many, many years. So what was that, 15, 16, 17 years or so?
Yeah,
so
until
like
Red Hat bought them.
Until Red Hat bought them, because to be completely honest, they couldn't survive them on their own.
Yeah, that's also fair to say.
They had a problem because in order to create the CentOS distribution, you just had to put in the work.
Yeah.
And since they were recompiling the Red Hat sources and then creating another distribution out of it, it just took time, and it wasn't. Suddenly, it became a project that was half commercial. Because a lot of commercial companies were expecting that CentOS is going to be there forever, and it is going to be on the market forever, so they can just go by using CentOS. I'm not saying that this is bad.
Me neither.
But at the same time, this is one of the things that we need to talk about today, is that this is not bad. But if you intend to go that route, you need to understand that this is going to create problems for you, because if you are not investing in time and money needed for your distribution that you are going to use, somebody else has to. And then you are more or less committed to that somebody else having some control over you, because you are not investing in the operating system. And this is I think what we need to say in order to set the things up. And now let's talk about 2020, start of the pandemic, start of a lot of users running from home, big changes in the enterprise world, using much more and many more Linux machines, scaling up and so on.
Yeah, when Red Hat made that announcement that they're going to switch their focus from CentOS to CentOS Stream, what we now call CentOS Stream, they also made a couple of very, very, very weird decisions that related to the release cycle of CentOS 7 and 8 and the end of life of those products and whatnot. So that was a big problem.
So please do explain, before you continue, do explain the difference between upstream and downstream distributions. This is also important.
I think that it's a timeline thing. It's basically
Yes,
where you
yes,
put
it is,
things
yes,
in
but
timeline.
When we talk about upstream and downstream, we are so used to this terminology that we don't think about it. But people should be aware that something being upstream or downstream defines the way that the distribution is being not only compiled but also crafted. Because if you have a bug, the bug will first you are going to be aware of the bug usually when the bug is implemented in the code that is being compiled in the upstream version of the Linux. In this particular case, it used to be Fedora. The Fedora used to be first. Then the stable versions of the packages were then transferred to Red Hat Enterprise Linux.
And then
To CentOS.
downstream from that was CentOS.
Yes, and this meant that the bugs usually were noticed in the Fedora.
Corrected in Red Hat.
Corrected in Red Hat, and then you were pretty much well sure that everything is going to work as advertised on CentOS. But at the same time, you got pretty old versions of the packages themselves.
Yeah, so
because it took time.
Fedora, Red Hat, CentOS. If you look at it that way, timeline, time goes from left to right to the right direction. Fedora version of the packages were first, bug tracking, whatever. Then they were added to the Red Hat as stable packages, and then people who were working on the CentOS project were recompiling that from source, the stable version of the package, implementing them for the distribution and for packages and for.
So sometimes it actually took years before the package came from Fedora into the CentOS.
Yeah, it mostly didn't, but sometimes it took a long time. But the upshot of that was quality.
Yes, it's
it was super stable. It was super stable.
It was super stable. I checked. I have still CentOS 5 that is running on a machine that is in sort of kind of production. It's an NGO machine. This is in a production being used as a file server and a local internet server that hasn't been touched for, 9 years. And it still runs. It's completely fine. The reason why I even came to realize that it is still running is because people were asking me to upgrade the system because it is getting slow and they need more disks. And that's
actually the story of the old CentOSs and Fedoras.
Yes,
exactly what you said. You can copy paste that to all of them, because I didn't upgrade them. Although actually that's also a topic for another podcast episode, upgrading Linux to a new version. That's a very, very slippery slope thing. But back then it was possible, actually.
It is still possible today, but
very difficult.
You need to be prepared. You need to be prepared that you're going to run into a lot of problems that are almost the same as with Windows.
Yeah.
So the services themselves can become so complicated that the updating of the operating system is not the problem, but tens of thousands of packages that are required to be updated are a problem.
Yeah, there are codependencies, configuration changes, config file changes, library changes, whatnot. Yeah.
So first, Red Hat decided that they are going to be turning CentOS into CentOS Stream. CentOS Stream
basically to another form of Fedora.
Yes, they said that this is going to just be a small change, but then people realized that this change meant that the CentOS is not going to be downstream from Red Hat, but it is going to be upstream from Red Hat. So basically, it's going to be in the same position as Fedora.
Yeah.
And it's going to receive completely new packages. It is going to be a rolling distribution. And we didn't mention what the rolling distribution is, but basically, this is a distribution that is changing all the time, and new packages are getting implemented directly into the distribution itself. And it wasn't supposed to be in the start. It was supposed to be only one version. So basically, it was supposed to be CentOS 8, 9. I think it was 9 because 8 was the last one that was supported in CentOS normal.
Okay.
So I think the 9 was first one, but I'm not sure on that. I can be proved to be wrong.
That the whole process that you just described, I think, invoked a lot of rational, not only discussion and irrational, but also quite rational, not only fears, but actually backlash from the community, because a lot of people, because they realized that they are now going to go to upgrade to something that's upstream, they realized that their systems are probably not going to be as stable as they were. And that's a problem for production.
Okay, this was one of the problems. Then Red Hat said that they are going to end of life CentOS 8.
Yeah.
And this was one of those huge problems.
Yeah, because that one had the release cycle that was shorter than CentOS 7.
So basically, I think, is CentOS 7 still supported?
I think it is in extended support or whatever they call it right now. I can check. Go on.
Check. So, but basically, what they said is that if you have installed or upgraded from CentOS 7 to CentOS 8, you are going to be
2024 June the 30th.
So 10 years support. So basically, right now, or back way then, if you upgraded from CentOS 7 to CentOS 8, you suddenly got your support cut down to 3 years instead of 10.
Not 3, 2 years. 2 years and a couple of months.
Okay.
2019 to 2021.
So
And
basically,
they did that mid-cycle.
they did it mid-cycle because they did it basically 1 year after the
Release of the-
release was done. And a lot of enterprises, to be completely fair, a lot of enterprises are always waiting for a couple of years because the CentOS was supported for 10 years. And the other thing is that they are waiting to see if the new distribution is stable.
Yeah,
They need-
SP1 methodology.
Yes, this is the one thing, and the other thing is that you need quite some time to be able to make sure that all the internal applications, everything that you are running in your workflow is running on the new version of the CentOS, and you used to have a lot of time.
Yeah.
Now suddenly you didn't have any time. This was the first thing, and the other thing was that suddenly mid-cycle you just understood that you are going to be switching. You switched from 7 to 8. Suddenly, the CentOS 8 was
End of life very quickly.
End of life or pulled from under your legs, and then you realize that the thing that is going to be the next is distribution. So the things that you should be upgrading to is suddenly upstream from the everything that you're used to working with.
Which completely changes everything, not only from management and administration perspective, it's about the release cycle perspective as well.
But it's also from the risk management perspective.
Yeah, sure.
And the biggest problem is that when we are dealing with enterprises, these things, these callouts about versions 7, 8, 9, they don't care about this. They care about risk management, risk mitigation. They want to know what is going to be the risk assessment matrix for the given distribution, and suddenly everything is out the window.
Yeah.
And enterprises don't like this.
Yeah, and that is the direct reason why Alma Linux and Rocky Linux came to be.
Yes.
Because some people who used to work for the CentOS project and whatnot and Red Hat,
who actually
whatever.
established the CentOS project.
Okay. Titles are less important, if you ask me, or attributes, decided that this is not acceptable and that they want to kind of continue in the vein or in the spirit of CentOS. So basically what Red Hat did in preparation for the situation that happened a couple of weeks ago was to pull the rug under us with the change of the release cycle. Downstream became upstream. And a lot of people started thinking, what the hell should we do? A lot of them went Debian, Ubuntu, SUSE, whatever. But also a lot of them went with Alma and Rocky Linux. It's beyond. It's not a question. That's what happened.
And let me just put a side note there. There is also Oracle Linux.
Yeah.
That is also downstream from. Basically, it's downstream from CentOS. It used to be downstream from CentOS, and then it was suddenly became downstream from Red Hat.
It was downstream.
Yes, it was downstream. To be completely honest, I don't know any company that is running Oracle Linux.
I do. Most of them are running Oracle databases. That's why.
Yes, yes, but because they're coming as a package. But it also used to be extremely stable.
Yes, they are. And our unbreakable kernel and all of those things very well.
They introduced some changes to the kernel, so they created an actual. If you needed it, it was a good distribution to have if you wanted to run Oracle database.
I agree.
Okay, so
basically, so after that whole situation, you were left with those three: either Alma Linux or Rocky Linux or Oracle Linux, if you wanted to go downstream.
And then 2-ish years went by.
Yes.
And we come to a point a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. When Red Hat threw a bombshell on everybody, and said, "What?"
I don't even want to say that. It's very difficult to understand the reasoning behind this, and especially some of the posts that they posted. This is not personal, just professional opinion. I'm not going to go into the terminology.
I'm going to.
That's your area.
I was personally attacked in a way because.
And the adult answer to that is to get personal as well.
No. But I felt personally attacked, and I need to make a few points clear because I'm not mad at them.
No, I'm disappointed.
I think that this is entirely unprofessional.
Agreed.
And I think that what they did first,
within their purview, but still unprofessional.
No, I think that what they did is completely rationally a capitalist thing to do.
Yeah.
But I think that gain and loss calculation
analysis is wrong.
completely wrong in this case.
I agree.
Because what they did is they got a short-term gain. If they got a short-term gain, in
Sure.
some part,
Okay.
they're probably saving a couple of $100s or a couple of $1,000s on paying people who are maintaining the CentOS packages. I think that's it. This is the short-term gain because you are.
Welcome to the cynical world of Yasmin.
But I think that this is the only thing. This is the only thing that I can think about, because what they intended to do, their idea was to say, okay, up until now you had access to sources
Source code, yeah.
of the Red Hat Enterprise Linux packages, so you could create a CentOS. Now we are going to
Alma Linux and Rocky Linux and Oracle Linux, sorry.
Yeah, so, but basically we're going to be able to create your downstream distribution. Now we are not going to release sources anymore.
That's not completely true.
They're going to release them to everybody who is the partner and who is registered with Red Hat.
Yeah, subscription.
But using them in order to create downstream packages is going to be
might result in the termination of the contract.
So basically, it's going to be considered
which is enterprise talk for we're going to terminate your contract.
Yes. So this became a problem, and the way they did it is that they first said they called everybody who was profiting, everybody who was creating downstream packages freeloaders. They used the actual
terminology.
Word. Yes, they actually used the word freeloader, and they
Drifters?
Yes, then
I heard that somewhere as well.
Yes, but freeloader, and they said that this is normal because inside Red Hat they are using this terminology for those people, and this is another thing that is highly unprofessional.
Yeah. Okay.
And the other thing is that they chose one person, vice president, to
for core platforms, yeah.
to explain to people what is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly people had more questions than answers, because the explanation was for the Red Hat, but suddenly people were asking about other products, JBoss, Ansible, and all the other things that are actually free
could end
right
up
now.
behind the subscription or
Yes.
paywall or something. Yeah, again, I'm going to let terminology for you because I couldn't care less. My difference to a lot of people who got very angry irrationally. The difference between those people and me is that I learned a long time ago that those bad companies are always going to freaking do whatever benefits them. That's the nature of the beast. And I'm not going to rationalize that, offer pros and cons. I'm just saying that it's that and move on. And you can keep on hammering on that, and I'm going to agree with you on a different level. My problem with what they said, and I'm going to quote now: simply rebuilding code without adding value or changing in any way represents a real threat to open source companies everywhere. This is a real threat to the open source, and one that has the potential to revert open source back into a hobbyist and hackers only activity. I don't want to even start to count the ways in which Mr. McGrath is wrong. Because basically what he said was the past 30 years of open source haven't worked.
Yes.
And they are going to continue not working for us, in brackets.
Yes.
And if we don't change that, because all of us are stupid, obviously, and incompatible to their way of thinking or their rationale, the situation because of that is going to end up again in the hobbyist community, which is where Linux came from. It's just like saying that, I don't know, people are not going to eat pancakes because pancakes require 3 minutes of work. That's the level of stupidity here. I'm giving a completely off the rails comparison here. For me, using Linux and for millions of people is akin to making a pancake. Very simple thing to do. I've been doing it for many years. There are business reasons why we use Linux, not only hobbyist ones. And even mentioning in a structured answer to the community that Linux is going to revert back to being a hobbyist and hackers only activity is what's called gaslighting.
I'm going to go with even harsher thing because
Because there ain't no way it's going to happen.
no. I think
I mean, statistically speaking, we can predict the future here. We don't need a crystal ball. That's never going to happen to Linux.
I think there is a lot more going on here, because in this particular case it says that simply rebuilding the code without adding value represents a real threat to open source companies everywhere. Okay, this has the potential to revert open source back into hobbyist. Okay, but
We
first,
agree that that's never going to happen.
yes, but the two things that I want to point out is, first, who is going to make a distinction between simply rebuilding the code and changing the code? How much changes are required to be able to say, okay, I have changed this code? Because this is what defines open source. You can sometimes just change a string because you want to just translate something to your language. You can change a function. You can change the order of the functions.
You can create a doc file with the translation
you can
of
create
the
another
language.
button in the user interface, whatever you want to do. And sometimes you're just going to simply rebuild the code under another platform. So if I want to move the code from Intel x86 to an ARM, I'm just simply rebuilding the code because I'm not changing anything other than things that are required, but I'm simply rebuilding it. And suddenly, this is the one thing. And the other thing is that suddenly it seems that like Red Hat and companies are going to decide and be the big policemen who are going to decide what represents changing
Worthy.
the code.
What's worthy?
Not only what's worthy, but also what means rebuilding the code. Because this means that you are not able to get the code. You first need to explain what you're going to do with the code. Then they let you have the code. Then you create something. Then you can rebuild it if they say that this is not a simple rebuild. So suddenly we have controllers inside
We
the open
have
source.
micromanagement.
Not only that way, but we are creating controllers, company controllers that are controlling the
Yeah,
code.
I agree. I agree with you.
And this is in complete contrast to everything that has been done up to today. And
Red Hat wouldn't exist without the open source methodology ever.
And not only this, it wouldn't be possible to create a lot of things because things like Ansible wouldn't fly.
Yeah.
Ansible is a nice program, but if it came to buying Ansible or using, for example, Puppet or Chef, that would be free because they are. I don't think that Ansible would be as big as it is today.
Okay, now we come to the part of the story where I want to mention one professional gripe that I have with this.
Yes?
Okay? And this is related to the work that we do.
Yes.
Okay? In two different ways. So, as we mentioned multiple times in our previous podcast episodes, we work as basically college professors. We teach people, amongst other things, how to use Linux. We have 2 college courses for that, and we have multiple courses for automation. And we have a virtualization course, which I'm guessing we're going to have to change because Red Hat obsoleted Red Hat Enterprise Virtualization as well. But that's a topic for another day. And the second part of our job, at times we do Linux education as a specialist education, as trainers, as Red Hat trainers. I used to do LPI as well and whatnot. I never, let's say, added value per definition of Mr. McGrath. Never changed it in any way because I'm not a programmer. I mean, I know how to program, but I decided I don't want to do that. But at the same time, I educated a couple of thousand people for using Linux, most of whom are using Red Hat and CentOS. You did maybe the same thing, or maybe a little bit of a smaller scale, but the principle still applies. The numbers are less relevant.
In the last 30 years, we probably introduced, I would call it probably 10 or more generations of pupils and people to the Linux ecosystem.
For me, in 2 years, it's going to be 20 years since I became a trainer. So
yes, but since we started with Slackware, we were probably one of the first guys that were using Linux.
I used to burn the Red Hat distributions and CentOS for our local Linux organization back in the 1990s.
Yes, so basically,
our background is in that.
So basically, the grassroots support for Linux is something that we are doing on the day-to-day basis because we are introducing people to a different way of thinking. And this is the way of thinking that Linux used to have.
Yeah, okay.
Suddenly, we have a huge elephant in the room that seems to think differently.
Yeah.
And the other guy who is thinking differently is Apple.
Yeah.
And we all know how much traction macOS has.
It's growing, but at the end of the day, the information that I heard today, yet again, they have 99% customer satisfaction rate.
For the last 4 years.
By the same company provided it.
Yes.
Now let's not go there. So going back to what I was saying, my problem with this. So basically what they're saying is because I never contributed code or changed the code in any way, I am not adding value, and I am a real threat to open source companies anywhere. I'm not personalizing this for personalization reasons. I'm just explaining the principle of what's written in the statement. So I don't care about the statement actually. And that has the potential to revert. So my work basically has the potential to revert open source back into hobbyist and hackers only activity, and yours as well. I cannot even start to describe how many BSs are in that thought process, because it's evidently wrong, because we every year we get 30, 40, 50 students that we teach Linux based stuff, even more if you calculate the computer architecture, because there are things there that are Linux related that we can also explain easily by using Linux as a metaphor. Don't get me started on operating systems, which is a mass course as well. So those are 2 courses, 200 students plus per year. Basically, at the end of the day, if I was to kind of like go to the attribute route and to the terminology route, both of us are freeloaders for Red Hat.
Yes, and the other thing is that
I'm not offended by that.
and the other thing is that I am also a little bit puzzled by the previous paragraph, because it says, finally, I'd like to address every open source company out there, whether your code is open today or you're considering moving to the open source model. By any measure, Red Hat has made it, and I hope many open source companies can succeed as we have. This has a ring to it, like we have won the game and that's it. We are no longer an open source company.
We are going to redefine how that
we
works.
Are not longer a open source company. We are now a company, and now we demand some sort of a payment back because we made it. So you are not going to be able to make it to become as we are, because you can decide for yourself whatever downstream rebuilds are available for you, and it's your call to make it easy or not.
Can I make a much simpler metaphor to what they're saying there?
Yes.
So the last metaphor was on purpose completely stupid.
Okay.
I did it on purpose. Now I'm going to go with a logical one. So we started the recording of our podcast today. Okay?
Yes.
And as a preparation for that, I brought you a bottle of water.
Okay.
Basically, that's just like me bringing you a bottle of water so that you can drink it and then asking something for return.
That's okay.
That is the exact metaphor for what they're saying.
Yes, but this is completely fine, unless we are in the open source world and we have all decided we are going to be a contributor to the open source world, because this is not normally the open source world.
This room, if our podcast is the open source world in that metaphor, I contributed a bottle of water to that world, and I am not expecting anything in return.
That's my point. If you try to make a point about not contributing, this entire podcast doesn't make sense, because we are just rebuilding the information that we have.
Yeah, how stupid we are. Just for context, in Croatia, the water is basically free. There are many places where you can get it for free. We do pay for the water in residential bills and whatnot, but you can still go to, let's say, a shopping center or a mall, go to the bathroom and drink as much water as you want to. So, but let's say that it's not a commodity in a sense in which it is all over the world.
Okay, but let's go back to the open source thing. I have a large problem with the idea. Let's please stop here. I see this as it is. It's just a capitalist way of saying we are paying for something that nobody's paying us back for. So we have decided,
which is also wrong.
It is sort of kind of true in a completely capitalistic world that doesn't consider that open source is something that actually succeeded.
Yes.
It used to be completely true back way then when IBM did 360 operating systems. So they had their own operating system on their own servers. They said, okay, we are not going to release the operating system because you cannot create the servers. This is proprietary and that's it. But suddenly this becomes something that they're selling as a product They don't want anybody else to create the product that's going to look similar because they are providing the money to create the product. And this is completely fine if you ignore the entire open source world.
Yeah, which is the reason why they exist. Raison d'être.
Yes.
Without that world, they do not exist.
And it says that we are not under any obligation to make things easier for the builders. This is our call to make. I'm completely fine with this.
Yeah,
but it is also our call to make that we don't like the way this is going, because
or the
tone, because suddenly when I need to do a training on something based on Red Hat, suddenly I will have more questions than answers. Because I
didn't even consider the amount of questions that people are going to ask.
I already got asked by a couple of people because they want to understand what is going to happen. They cannot use CentOS that is going to be stable. They need to use a third-party solution instead of CentOS. This third-party solution is going to be at the whim of IBM. So suddenly Alma Linux or Oracle Linux or Rocky or whatever are going to be using some side tools to, I wouldn't call it steal, but get their hands on the source code.
From IBM's Red Hat's perspective, it's going to be in the gray area.
Yes, it's going to be. It's really going to be in the gray area because open source has a pretty defined way of getting the source, distributing the source, and using the source.
But people from Alma Linux already said that they're stopping they don't want to guarantee 100% binary compatibility with Red Hat anymore.
This is one
which
thing,
is reasonable.
But people from Rocky said that they're going to be using the
cloud images,
the cloud images, and these cloud images are going to be provided by Red Hat. But this is also gray area, and companies don't like gray areas. Companies who demand training from us don't like being trained on something that may or may not be a liability for them. So they're going to just skip over and say, is there any
Let's wait for this to play out, at least that.
And this is one thing. And the other thing is that seeing what has happened in the last 3 years, can you guarantee what is going to happen with Ansible, with JBoss, with OpenShift, with all the other projects?
So you're going the Jeff Geerling question.
Yes, but because he has vested
interest. Same question in the
video. He has a vested interest in it because he contributed a lot and wasted a lot of time. Contributed a lot of time into providing Ansible books, creating Ansible books for free. Creating amazing material, did a lot of teaching on Ansible, and right now he doesn't have any idea what the future is going to look like.
Yeah, that's why he officially said that he is removing support for Red Hat Enterprise Linux.
And so we are in the completely strange world in where the Ansible project that is officially done by Red Hat is not supported on the Red Hat Enterprise Linux, or doesn't have support by Jeff. And Jeff did a lot of playbooks that are important.
Fundamentally used all over the world. Yes, I agree. And all that situation. So do you have anything we want to add to this, or are we done with rationally explaining Red Hat why they mocked it up? I want to kind of close that.
I think that I'm going to stop here because I think that I gave enough of my position here. I just feel like a little bit of betrayal has happened when it comes to communication between Red Hat as such and trainers, and the community that is not the freeloader community that is only copying people, but also the community that is promoting Red Hat. Because suddenly you are trying to, instead of having a completely firm idea of what is going to happen next, suddenly you are in a position of trying to reinterpret what is happening and have no idea what the future holds, but you need to hold the line for the Red Hat. And it looks like a lot like having a basically official committee of the Communist Party dictating the current viewpoint on the world politics. And from my perspective, I think that they're going to be getting the new presentations ready to say what the current political objective of Red Hat is, or current vision and mission of Red Hat for the particular course is. So suddenly instead of trying to teach people how to use Linux, we are also going to have to take different approaches based on different trainings that we're going to do, because
to put out fires.
not only to put out the fires, but to explain what the current overview of the situation is, because for example, basic training, so 1 to 5, 1 to 4, 134 for the CentOS, for Red Hat 8 is not the same
9.
as training for the 9. We can do both, depending on who wants to learn something. And the information that was valid for the Red Hat 8 is not the same information as the Red Hat 9.
And both of them could be wrong right now as
yes, so suddenly the committee is going to have to...
there are actually in those courses, there are some bits and pieces of material about subscription and licensing.
And about Red Hat and about the company and so on. So I expect this to become a small manifesto that is going to be distributed before the official...
We start to do official round of training, let's say in the autumn or in the winter or whatever.
The official color of Red Hat is red. So little red books are going to be distributed.
Okay, let's end this part of the conversation before we move on to some of the responses. I hate to leave stuff on a negative note. That's me. I'd like to kind of like have... No, I have a little bit more things to add to that story. I'm really hoping that this is going to turn up well in some way. I don't know what the, A to B to C to D to E to F to G is over Red Hat. The calculus of that, I don't understand it, nor do I need to know it. But what I will say for the record, I love doing the training, hence the reason why I've been doing it for 20 years. I love doing the Red Hat Academy programs, which we do day in, day out. Actually, I had a couple of questions about some of the Red Hat Academy stuff today, which is in the middle of summer, while a lot of people are actually taking vacations. So it's not that... it's not that we are just, lashing out at stuff because we are under, we are not on vacation and drinking pina coladas by the seaside. It's actually the fact that these sorts of things that Red Hat does are going to make our work distinctively more difficult.
And this makes it, from my perspective, it makes it even more difficult to do because Red Hat training is the best right now in the field.
It's not only because of that. That's the whole reason why companies select it a lot of times. That's something that I do know something about.
Yes, and
this is one of my reasons why I initially became a Red Hat trainer versus something else, because they had a structured system, which includes a product, a support for the product, and education for the product.
We are not going to talk about education today.
We already did.
Yes, but we are going to be needing to provide a deeper deeper insight into how certifications work, because
we kind of covered that in one of the episodes.
Yes, but
we didn't
make too much of a point about what Microsoft is doing or did to its own education program.
It's not only that. A lot of people messaged us privately to do a couple of episodes related to Microsoft certification and Red Hat and VMware and others.
Yes,
and we will be doing that.
Because certification is a big problem.
Yeah.
People demand knowledge, but also people want to feel stable. They want to have micro certification, Red Hat certification. And it used to be you had Oracle, you had Microsoft, you had Red Hat, you had VMware,
Cisco,
well. And that was it. And then you had the others. The others weren't specialized, or were extremely specialized, in the other hand, or were just, like, for example, ECDL. They were just general purpose certification that proved that you are able to turn on a computer, basically.
Yeah.
Yes, but these were not certification that were industry-based. And Red Hat used to be industry-based certification. Right now, industry doesn't know what to do with Red Hat, and this makes our lives extremely difficult when it comes to working.
Okay. So with that being said, we now come to the part of the story in which we analyze some of the responses, which I find to be super hilarious.
Yes.
And I'm not talking about people. I'm not the reaction video type. Especially for people saying stuff. I'm talking about the way in which SUSE responded and in which Oracle responded specifically. Not because I don't want to talk about Alma and Rocky. We are talking about companies that are not in the same universe of scale. Okay,
Yes.
so I want to focus on these two because they're much, much bigger and their responses are much more to the point of trying to prove something that's worth something in the open source world, at least now.
Yes.
And I'm not getting into their reasons why, because again, history teaches us that companies shouldn't be necessarily trusted or, evangelized or something like that, because they have a bad track record of breaking a lot of promises. But still, the responses of these two companies made me laugh in a sense, but not in an evil way. Just it was funny.
I think that SUSE is okay. They are something that their distribution and the entire ecosystem community, and so that is dedicated to a particular thing that is pretty similar to Fedora, to be completely honest. And I don't think that their response is, as you said, interesting, and it makes some valid points, if not all of them. But I think that Oracle's response was much more important.
Oracle's response was a punch in the face.
Because
yes.
I didn't think two things. I didn't expect that Oracle is going to create such a PR release at
Me neither.
all.
Okay.
Because this was way out of corporate image that they are using almost always.
Yes.
Because this wasn't a corporate PR. This is an actual statement of position of a company that was created in order to inform not only the companies but also other people. So this is not intended. Usually the Oracle PRs are read and
about enterprise customers, blah blah blah,
and they're read by nobody, and they're only interesting to select people who are tracking what Oracle is doing. Right now, they just suddenly realize that they are able to provide some sort of insight on the open source, and they created a PR that was on the point, that made a lot of sense. It was created. I would call
not
it
the first day after, so they had time to think about
yes,
what they're going to put out.
It was pretty assertive.
It was
pretty assertive for a company. It was not a usual press release that has basically no punch in it.
Like a robotic.
Yes.
Yeah, this was a human, let's say, PR, and they said a lot of stuff in terms of their reaffirmation to the open source principle and whatever they want to do, which is fine,
Yes.
which we kind of wanted to have as well. But then in the last part of their PR, this is where the stuff gets really spicy in a sense. IBM's actions are not in your best interest by killing CentOS as a Red Hat Enterprise Linux alternative and attacking Alma and Rocky Linux because they're downstream. IBM is eliminating one way your customers save money and make a larger share of their wallet available to you. Fair point. If you don't yet support your product on Oracle Linux, we will be happy to show you how easy that is. Give our customers more choice, which is basically an open business area for them that they could exploit. This is what capitalist company does. I have no problem with that. That's what capitalism does. And then it's the 1-2-3 punch in the face. Finally, to IBM, here's a big idea to you. You say you don't want to pay all of those Red Hat Enterprise Linux developers. Here's how you can save money. Just pull from us. Become a downstream distributor of Oracle Linux. We will happily take on the burden. And they also, in one other part of their PR, mentioned that they are hiring people so that they should feel free to join the company as well.
And the other thing is that if you read it in detail, there is a point that they're making that IBM is trying to save money on engineers that are doing work on the Red Hat Enterprise Linux source. And I think that this can be also represented as it seems like IBM is not willing to pay for people to program.
That's exactly what they're exploiting here.
And what they're basically telling is that they're putting a small foot in the door to the idea of that IBM is going to to come to a point in time when they're going to say that they don't care about Red Hat Enterprise Linux at all because it costs too much money. Because to be completely honest, CentOS has much bigger market share.
Yeah.
And this is what is bothering IBM in the first place.
They wanted to kind of transfer that to Red Hat.
They wanted to do it when they tried to kill
Switched.
CentOS.
Yeah, when they
It
killed.
didn't have, because if I remember correctly, the market share was something like 17% CentOS, 3% Red Hat Enterprise
Yeah,
Linux.
it was much larger.
So CentOS was basically the thing, and IBM was hoping that they're going to convert those users into subscriptions. This didn't happen. Now they are closing down the pipe of the source code and saying, okay, nobody's going to be able to create their own version of CentOS because they are freeloaders. And what Oracle is saying, okay, next they're going to close down the Red Hat Enterprise Linux, go our way and use Oracle Linux because Oracle Linux is much better. And this is not something that you usually see from the companies.
Yeah.
The last time I saw this was when back way then when HP and Gateway were battling it out on the desktop market in the 90s, when they were actually directly targeting each other's machines and saying things about the other company that are not usual in today's corporate world.
Yeah. And for I would say that having read some other things, it seems that this decision did not come from IBM. It's actually Red Hat internal. If that's true, then I have to say Red Hat as a company, I've kind of supported you, made a life out of using your products and teaching people how to use them for the past quarter of a century. Love you guys, but you lost your way.
And you are a freeloader.
Oh, okay.
Because you
I'm
are
happily freeloading of open source work while providing services
because you're
for my customers.
Because you're freeloading every time when you're paying Red Hat for the material for the course. You're freeloading every time you're paying for the books. You're freeloading every time when you're paying for your certificates.
Come on.
And this,
chill down, dude.
And this is the thing, because what we are doing is not only we are doing it because we want to, but it also costs money. That there is an actual cost involved for us.
Mm-hmm.
So we are paying for something, and then suddenly this somebody is steering the pond in such a way that nobody knows what the next thing is going to be. And I don't like this. I don't like this because
the uncertainty of it is really not assuring.
I think that the biggest problem that we have with the Red Hat is that suddenly people are talking about what is the end game.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't
when you start questioning yourself that, it's probably in the enterprise world time to get out of the game.
Yes, because the game shouldn't have the ending.
Correct.
And when you're talking about what the IBM's end game or Red Hat's end game is, this means that somebody is planning for an exit. Mm-hmm. Somebody is planning to finish something and then get out of the market. And then when this kind of FUD exists, suddenly you are going to end up with much more than you are hoping for.
And to kind of wrap this up, because we've ranted for the past hour, I have a question for you, and I'm going to answer it as well. Where do we go from here? I'm not talking about education. I'm talking about our other stuff that we do for our clients. Which distributions are we going to use for our future deployments? Is it still going to be CentOS or Red Hat or Scientific or Rocky or Alma or something else? Because I have a very firm opinion about that.
I think that suddenly for general purpose education for Linux, I suddenly think that either Debian or Ubuntu is going to be the way forward.
I think Debian. Not Ubuntu.
Either Debian or Ubuntu. But I'm saying this because for let's call it low-level Linux education, the first steps in Linux and so on, it doesn't make a difference. So
forget about education.
Debian is better then.
Yeah.
For enterprise use, probably Debian.
Yeah.
Because Debian has proved to be stable. I don't have a problem with Debian. It is going to require a lot, a lot of work to move over to Debian because the documentation is not as good as Red Hat was.
Okay.
But it's going to be done. So probably Debian. For education, as I said, probably Debian or Ubuntu, because Ubuntu is the one that has the most exposure and the most users. And for the real interesting stuff, I honestly don't know. I don't know where will I try to explain to people how I don't know virtualization works, how Dockers work, how different other technologies work. I'm not completely sure.
Okay, for me, Debian, for all of the above, and to kind of hammer that point home, because I actually have some of the let's say inside knowledge of some of the processes that are happening right now. We do have clients asking us about this, and I have at least one very big course scheduled for. It's actually for the time being it's in 2 parts. It might become in 4 parts as well. Customers are openly asking about this, and they one of our bigger clients wants to do education on Debian.
I know that this is going to happen, and I think that this.
And I'm not thrilled about that. Just so that we are clear.
I think that the biggest loss is going to be for the customers themselves, because the fragmentation that we are now seeing in the Android world is going to happen.
Android is a good topic there as
Yes.
well, because they're kind of like leaving the marks after them that they're going closed source as well. Very openly.
This is one thing, and the other thing is that the fragmentation of the released or the currently production, the operating system that is currently in production, is huge. It used to be that either you had Debian, you had Ubuntu, or you had RedHat, CentOS. When you wanted to learn something, you were usually, if you were adamant to do it, you would do the Red Hat courses, because the Red Hat certification was the best and is the best.
Still is. And it's going to still be the best for the foreseeable future. No questions about it. But
when you come to think about it, if somebody is pinching pennies about distribution of the code, I am seeing signs that suddenly the distribution of the documentation and everything else could become a problem. Because if people are not interested...
But documentation is only available with subscription for years now.
Yes, but suddenly...
Or the vast majority of it.
Okay, yes, but you can register as a developer. This is fine. Currently,
within
for free.
Our understanding of open source, that's not what it should be.
And the other problem is that you can register as a developer and have free licenses, free subscriptions for using Red Hat Enterprise Linux for 16 installations.
Yeah, the number that you saw, 200 something, was wrong.
If you do it today.
Yeah.
What is going to happen tomorrow?
By the way, I have no problems with them asking for subscription for access to the know-how. That's completely fine.
Yes, but if they are pinching pennies,
documentation, stuff like that.
If they are pinching pennies, suddenly people are not going to be registering. Only the people who are interested in documentation are going to be registering. And I think that the number of people reading documentation is going to fall down. And then suddenly somebody is going to say, okay, do we need so many people providing the documentation? And there's going to become a vicious cycle where people...
A rolling update.
The rolling update is going to become a problem.
It's actually started, because they are still in the process of... how should I put this delicately? Of removing a lot of employees from the company.
And the other thing is, let me just make an example. You install Fedora. Or CentOS Stream, you have a problem. You put
Who do you call Ghostbusters?
No. You just put in the bug report into the publicly open bug reporter database. Whatever this is, you create a ticket, you create a bug report, and say, okay, this is not working. And then Red Hat says, okay, we're not going to finish. We're not going to be working on this in Fedora or CentOS Stream because we are not interested in it. You need to pay for the license to see.
And you can see the answer on Red Hat.
You can see the answer, and the answer is going to be done in the Red Hat Enterprise Linux next version. This is going to happen, and this is something that is scaring a lot of people.
Agreed.
And this is completely getting out of what open source should be.
Oh, I agree with that, definitely.
And
it used to be very easily available ISOs for the distribution, for the sources. You can download the ISO files of the old versions with SRPMs. I know. I burned a lot of them for a lot of the people when we were still doing the conferences here and whatnot. It's a fundamental shift, and professionally, I'm super annoyed by that.
And I'm going to make a not so fine a point of trying to wrap things up
Please do.
by trying to say one more thing. And this thing is, answer me one question. If we are dealing with and talking about enterprises, imagine that you are a small team that is in a few years you are growing from, I don't know, 3 employees to 100 employees. You deployed your servers using CentOS. You want your people to be trained in RedHat or CentOS. RedHat is the closest possible certification, so you're going to train them and so on. Do you see the point in switching to anything else other than RedHat when the time comes that you actually need hundreds of servers? And do you see that do you feel that you are giving something or paying for something to RedHat? Or do you think that your company is going to suddenly switch to something else when they gain the company-wide knowledge of a certain technology?
The first thing that always comes to mind when you say Linux is free.
But Linux is free. But you're paying for the knowledge, you're paying for certification, you're going to pay for the licenses because you're going to be needing them.
What happens if I don't want to do that?
But even if you don't want to do that, you are going to suddenly, when you come to a point where your corporation is large enough, you are going to be needing those.
Maybe I'll just switch to cloud and let them do the hard work.
And then you're going to realize that your cloud is
Too expensive.
Too expensive, or more expensive than just training your own people.
Okay.
And you are going to, in the end, you are going to provide some sort of funds to IBM because you are being pushed down that route, and some licenses are going to get paid.
Okay.
So I think that this doesn't even make sense from the freeloader perspective, because if you are training people to use CentOS, they're going to be using CentOS, then they're going to try to install
Yeah, conversion of that to Red Hat in small, medium enterprises is going to be something. In larger enterprises, it's going to be much bigger, and they definitely get benefit out of that. I agree.
So I don't think that this even makes business sense.
Me neither. I think it's a bad stain on their reputation, which is the worst risk that you can do on a corporate level, outside of imploding a company for some kind of a whatever technical or banking or money reason.
Even you are basically what you are trying to say is that the only thing that is worse than this is Twitter.
Not in so many words, and not my metaphor, but yes. Okay.
Okay, so let's wrap this thing up. What we are trying to say is that we are not impressed by what Red Hat did.
Nope.
We are not impressed by what Red Hat is doing.
Nope.
And we have absolutely no idea what Red Hat is going to do.
Nope.
So this is the takeaway from this short
the
session.
most pointless episode ever.
No, this short session and
short, an hour and 10 minutes session.
And if I remember correctly,
what's the going rate for psychiatrists these days?
I don't know, but
this is what it is for us.
Yes, but what I'm trying to say is that on the course for the teachers, they taught us that every session has to have its own takeaways, and we don't have many.
Yeah, the takeaway right now, sorry to say that out loud, but it is so. We are not sure whether or not we can trust Red Hat for the purpose that we're discussing today.
I wouldn't call it trust. I would be pretty...
Business trust.
No, not only this. Trust requires that you promise something, then it becomes a problem. It doesn't become a problem. You stick to your word, and you don't stick to your word, and so on. Right now, it's not that I cannot trust Red Hat.
Okay.
It's just I have no idea what is going to happen.
But what do you need to know? We keep on coming back to this question.
Because people who are paying for the people who are coming to our courses want to plan ahead.
Oh, I agree with that.
And people who are trying to plan ahead try to understand what is going to happen next, not what is happening right now. And seeing what Red Hat has done in the last 3 years, would you say that they are planning ahead?
I'm not exactly sure. They have to have some kind of an end game, the term that you mentioned earlier.
So either they
Otherwise,
have,
it's chaos, and that makes no sense.
so either they are creating chaos, or they have an end game.
Yeah.
And do you wish to stick with the guys who are having an end game in the business?
I'll have to stick around so that I can see what's going to happen in the end, because whatever happens is going to be a popcorn moment.
Okay. So that's it. Thank you for being with us. This was the IT show, episode whatever. I'm Yasmin,
I'm Vedran.
and see you next time.
Bye.